So to go a little deeper into red teaming and what is red team, according to a red team journal, it's the practice of looking at a problem or situation from the perspective of an adversary. In information security, this can be applied in various ways. We're going to cover adversary emulations here. Those could be blind red team engagements or non-blind purple team type of engagements. But it can also be social engineering. For example, sending each of your employees or staff a phishing-like email with a unique URL. If they click on it, you know who fell for it. That's a great way to perform awareness training and to season the staff to ensure that they don't fall for real attacks. You also have some tabletop exercises or wargaming. These are generally non-technical. I'll give a shout out to Black Hills Information Security with their backdoors and breaches card game that allows you to do these tabletop type of exercises. These, again, are non-technical. In this case, we're going to talk about the more technical ones, really focusing on adversary emulations, understanding the adversary, and then emulating them. So some red team specific terms, just to make sure we're all speaking the same language as I go through here. I know I might have mentioned some already, but an adversary and a threat is an agent that would likely target you or can cause damage. The blue team is anyone that works in defense. So your security operations center, your incident response, generally your operations teams, your engineering teams. I would even argue that everyone is part of the blue team because anyone that receives a phishing email should be reporting that, in which case they are now helping you defend your organization. Command and control is one of my favorite topics, and that's what we'll jump into quite a bit here. It's probably the most important tactic for an adversary, unless they're creating a worm that propagates by itself and reaches its objective without communication. Command and control is pretty important. You need to be able to have command and control over the machines that you compromise and be able to move laterally and reach your objective. And lastly, as I mentioned, tactics, techniques, and procedures. Tactics are adversary goals at a high level. We'll look at the MITRE attack framework shortly. This is what an attacker wants to do, for example, initial access. The techniques are various different ways to achieve that goal. And then procedures are the use cases or exactly how they did each of those techniques. So let's jump into it. Why do we do this? Well, one of the main reasons is for an end-to-end assessment of the entire organization. Now, you can argue that the original idea of doing penetration testing was to look at an entire organization and see how far you can go in. But nowadays, the industry and a lot of regulatory requirements and definitions are really pushing penetration testing to testing technology. So we differentiate here with red teaming because red teaming is testing people, process, and technology. And I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. It's not a limited scope test. You don't have just a certain amount of IPs or URLs or times that you can test, maybe only weekends or nights, right? You are actually emulating a malicious attacker, which does not have any of those limitations. We want to talk and do the full cyber kill chain, right? This is one of the earlier frameworks by Lockheed Martin that started with recon and ended with an objective. We want to do all of those. Most of these red team engagements are blind. When you're not doing a blind engagement, then we like to call that a purple team engagement, where you're working together with the blue team. And lastly, you want to determine what tactics, techniques, and procedures would work undetected if a true attack occurred, and what you can how you can remediate this, maybe create some sort of detection or better processes to identify the adversary and contain them. Another main reason for doing this is measuring the effectiveness of the people, process, and technology. We often see this when we read the FireEye or Mandiant reports, right, that just came out. We saw the dwell time there and the dwell time going down. We generally do this as incident response. We go backwards. We we identified that someone got in, and then we try to figure out all the times before. When you do this on the red team perspective, the red team will be taking very good notes. They know exactly what time that phishing email was sent, when it was clicked, when their command and control received a new agent connection, when they moved laterally, when they executed various different TTPs, and you can measure all that. In blind testing, you will also have certain trusted agents, which we'll cover shortly. They can also measure the blue team detection. How long did it take them to detect a particular system getting compromised? How long did it take them to contain it, to eradicate it, etc.? And then we also want to look at the processes. Generally, you have different levels in a security operations center. Maybe level 1 saw an alert. They looked into it. Did they escalate it? Did level 2 or whatever process you have look at it? When did it become an event? Was the handoff correct? Were there correct people? Did they receive communication? All of these measurements you can do in a red team engagement, which makes it's a lot harder to do in an actual incident. And then lastly, we like to test assumptions. We trust but want to verify. Generally, we'll hear that a particular attack won't work here because we applied all our patches, or we have outbound data leakage prevention, or we have multi-factor authentication. Or the latest one that we've heard since the beginning of the year is, can the Iranians breach us? So we can test all of these and give senior management a good idea of our holistic security posture. And training and improving the blue team. It's not about winning. There's an excellent book by Joe Vest and James called Red Team Operations. They do a great job illustrating this. It's not about winning. It's about making security better. So every time you train, think of a boxer. Every time before that main fight, they train and they train and they train. This is exactly what you're doing. Every red team exercise will result in the blue team getting better. Not only the people, but the process and the technologies as well.